All right. Hello to everybody that is tuning in for another episode of the Coach's Corner. We have our wonderful coaches here tonight, and I am going to say a couple words and disappear. If you are tuning in, feel free to ask questions.
Hello to everybody.
Just pop them in the chat box, and I will be sure to pass them on over. With that being said, I'm going to disappear and hand this off to Viscount Tristan.
Thank you, Vesper. Once again, we appreciate your organizing all this stuff and making the magic happen. Welcome everybody to the newest episode. We're talking about getting back going after taking a break and reestablishing the fun that is the SCA in terms of our fighting, learning and training, all the stuff that goes with getting back to practice, getting back to going to tournaments. And we have with us tonight Duke Eliahu and Sir Octa to discuss the nuts and bolts. Now, just as a little bit of insight, we scheduled this program, the topic tonight, about 2 months ago. And at that point, we had really big question marks. Like, we knew things were going to be able to get back going at some point, but we had no idea when. And just this week, a number of US states have announced that they're going back on removing the mask mandates, the limitations and the restrictions on gatherings and things like that, which maybe this is the beginning of things starting to get rolling again. We can't necessarily be certain. As of the recording of this episode, the SCA, to my knowledge, has not made any specific announcement about opening up practices or anything of that nature. We're just talking about when that does happen, whether it happens in your area or just generally. These are some things, some hard and tangible things to look at for getting back in the swing of things. I'm sure we're all of the same mind where we're looking forward to getting out of the cabin fever we've been stuck in for a year now, and getting back with our friends, doing the activities that we love, and kind of catching up. So I know Sir Octa has put together some good topics tonight, so I'm going to kind of let him go through, talk about some of those things, and let's get into a good discussion on it. As always, if you have any questions, please throw them up in the comments. We had a great bit of audience participation last week with a lot of great questions, so throw them in there, and we're happy to address them. But with that, I'll give it to Sir Octa.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I kind of had to start off, before we get back all face-to-face and start sharing practices and stuff again. It's a great time to reevaluate, see where your body's at. Have you been just hanging out and not doing a whole lot during this whole year-long break? Have you been getting your cardio on and working out? So reestablishing some good habits with stretching your body, understanding where your capabilities and limitations are physically, mentally. A lot of it, we've taken a toll on eating too much or not getting out on walks and on the bicycle or out on your Pel. So really the first thing I would say is to reevaluate where you're starting from, not where you left off a year ago, but where you really are starting from physically and mentally right now. So if you've been doing your Pel work every day, every week, once a month, every 6 months, just know where you're starting from so you have a good idea of where you need to start working on.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, please.
So that I think the first thing, like step 0 before step 1, is give yourself a break. It's been a tough year in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So don't go back and feel guilty that you didn't practice every day or train every day or repair all your armor. Or it's been difficult. Be kind to yourself. Don't expect, even if you have been doing all this, that you're going to go back at doing all the training and preparation and exercise and all of that you're going to go back, and the first time back you're going to be where you were. Don't expect that. And if you haven't been, that's okay too. The point is to start. The point is to show up and get started. Because as a professor once said to me, it's apply Newton's laws of motion to your own practice, your own activity. If you're in motion, you tend to stay in motion. If you're at rest, you tend to stay at rest, unless acted on by an outside force. And that outside force can be a lot of things. It can be your desire to have fun. It can be the people you are with, your responsibility to them, or it can your need for something different. You need to get out there. It can be a lot of different things. Just go easy on yourself. The time to go hard on yourself is after a bit, after you get back into it then. But as you're starting out, as Octa says, evaluate where you are, and don't assume that you're going to go in as you were a year ago and do what you did a year ago, because that's more likely, you're more likely to hurt yourself, and then you're going to be out for a while longer. So that's my first bit about getting back into it.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to jump into it whole hog, misunderstand what you're ready for, and break yourself, and then have to sit out for another 6 months or a year. Trust me, that is not the right way to start. Being honest and truthful about where you're at, understanding that you're not where you need to be. It has no emotional bag. Don't let that emotional baggage get you. It's just reality.
Something to keep in mind too, that makes this pill go down a little bit easier, is to realize that fighting is perishable skill. And just because so don't expect that after taking a year-long break you're gonna catch back up. But the good news is that if you do get back into it, you won't spend the same amount of time getting to where you were at doing it the second time. You can catch up fairly quickly. And I'm not talking about in 2 weeks. I'm talking, within 2 months or so, 2-3 months. I think the biggest challenge is going to realize what your habits are and changing your habits. Humans have a very difficult time changing their habits. And of course, we've been a year stuck at home for the most part. And that is the habit change. It's going to be, getting to your practices, organizing, either setting up a new practice, maybe because you need to change locations or something of that nature, but make sure that this happens. Some great advice that I came into years ago, and I found it's very true. It takes about around 40 days to establish a new habit, or to get rid of an old habit and not feel like it's nagging you again. And that can be adding workouts to your schedule. It can be any type of activity that you want to do. So just think of keeping going for a month, or about 4 weeks or 5 weeks or somewhere in there. Just keep going that way, pace yourself. That's going to be a good way to, because if you can keep going that, if you set your habit, then like you said, with the inertia part, the object in motion tends to keep in that motion. Make it your habit. And that's a good way to look at it, to not beat yourself up about it, and have a good goal in mind of, all right, I'm going to do this for 5 weeks and just keep it rolling. And after that, then you can, if you need to make adjustments, you can do it. But I think all of us are going to be pretty eager, and eagerness can be its own problem when you jump into something so bonzo crazy that you do something that damages yourself, and now you've hamstrung your own efforts.
Yeah. And everything we're talking about is also applies to coming back from an injury. It really is the same thing. Take it, do go at the right pace, evaluate where you are, understand what your capabilities and limitations are, and avoid re-injuring yourself so you have another enforced timeout. So whether it's because of this year-long break, or whether it's an injury, because you do it long enough, you're going to have an injury. You're going to have something that will cause you to take a break. So the same thing applies, just giving a context for this discussion.
So just like getting ready for tournament season or what have you, start establishing some short-term goals. Short-term goal could be you got up and you repaired something on your kit. You looked through your arm armor today. You went out for a walk at lunch instead of sitting there and watching YouTube. Little goals. Start getting back in touch with your community if you've been out of touch or not working together. That's the beautiful thing about the SCA is most of us have a community of participants that we interact with at practice when we're camping and stuff. So, rely on one another, form that group. Helps to be a little bit of gets you back into that habit. You're excited to see these people and get back and work with folks. So that can also help get you back into a consistency and keep you honest when sometimes your habit is to turn the computer off at night after work and not go anywhere, because that's what we've been doing for the year. Motivation. And this is also a great time as you're getting ready to think about the structures of your practices. I know a lot of practices, we show up, we kibitz, we get our kits on, we do some form of stretching, and then we go out and we spar. We spar for 4 to 6 hours in the evenings and then take it off and we're done. So this is a chance to work together again as that community and go through some training exercises, do footwork drills, sword work drills, working with different levels of fighter, depending on what level of fighter you are. Maybe you're training some newer fighters, you're working on some skills with equal level fighters, you're learning from some more advanced fighters, but go with a plan when you go to practice, not just I'm going to show up and spar. If you go and establish a plan, you get people interested in some routines, then you have some other metrics to measure practice on. It's instead of measuring who won practice by killing their opponents.
Yeah, when you go into a practice, and this is something that actually taking a break can help you with, and that is break the habit chain, and that is to thinking of making the most of your practice time, because just like Octa described it, that describes a ton of different practices where you show up, put on armor, you spar for a few hours, go home. Yeah, you'll learn that way, but boy, that's the slow way to do it. There are some that can take that format and they can sort of structure in their mind what they want to go do, and they'll go into those sparring matches and they'll say, okay, I'm going to work on this or that and the other. But I've found for the most part, when people go to do just pick up sparring, they don't have it organized in their own mind. So use this opportunity to, when you contact the other folks that are going to be at your practice or you're organizing those practices, say, hey, how about we try to make the most of our practice time? Let's try some experimenting. And I'm sure those of you that have followed Coach's Corner have probably gotten some very good ideas of new ways of taking and implementing things like drills, exercises, different methods of building your skill other than just learning by jumping in the pool and swimming. The throwing in the deep end of the pool is how I usually describe that. Keep in mind that method, it also frustrates new people that want to be taught. So if you have some experience, even if you're just, what would be called maybe an adequate mid-level fighter, and you say, well, I'm not a knight, I'm not a royal peer, what do I have to teach? To somebody who's brand new, you've got a wealth of information that they would love to hear from. So as you go back to those practices, realize that you have an opportunity that others would love to have you share what you know how to do. You may not be the best at it, but you know more than they do. And, I grew up in a group where we didn't have any knights, and we had, a practice group that was led by somebody that, was a squire. They had a bit of experience, but, not every practice group has got dukes and knights and high level people to help them. Now, we have coaches here that would be happy to help you from a distance, to give you ideas and tangible things. So definitely explore that. We're here to help you, but have a mind of trying to make the most of the time that you're going to have at that practice. And it doesn't mean that it needs to be run like an Olympic coach type situation, or, like having a drill sergeant yelling at people to do this or don't do that or anything of that nature. But just try, find out what works, and you'll find out what every coach does through a bit of experience and trial and error, how to help people along quicker. Everybody will enjoy that. You'll make some mistakes, but along the way, people like to be shown what to do. They like to learn through some kind of structure. It doesn't have to be completely rigid, but to give them ideas, support them, rather than just throw a helm on them and say, all right, it's go time. So this is a good time to revamp how you look at your practice, how you look at the time you spend in your armor with other people, a lot of productive things that you can do. So just a new perspective, a new mental attitude will help a great deal.
Eliahu, you got anything on that subject? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. We've given people a lot of, over the past year, we've been doing this, all who've contributed to this, a lot of different tools. So here are different kind of drills. Here's footwork drills and other kinds of drills, and here are things you can do. And I think establishing a pattern, a habit for a practice, try different ways of structuring it. But the basic format is, some kind of warming up your body, usually with dynamic stretches in motion. Then you'll arm up, and start with drills, very specific drills or lessons, and then maybe several different kinds of drills, and then sparring. But sparring is not just go out there and spar. It's structured following the drill in a certain way to apply that. So drilling is not just, and I've seen this a lot, where people will drill on something and then they go out and spar and they completely forget about it. So learning how to focus your practice on the thing you've been drilling on, and understanding that you're not out there sparring trying to win, you're trying to learn a skill or set of skills and apply that. And then after you do that, there may be some sparring, but again, it's focusing on learning a particular skill until it becomes repeatable, and doing that usually with coaching. And then don't just stop, take off your armor and go home. A cool down and a stretching afterwards helps prevent injury, and most people don't take the time to do that. I think maybe one of the things we could do, I don't know which episode it was where we talked about the structure of a practice like that. If not, maybe we should reiterate that in another episode and provide some written guidance for, here are ways to structure a practice. But as Tristan and Octa said, that this is a chance going back to start fresh and start on a new path and try some new things and some new ways of doing this, and try it. It's always, don't try to make it perfect at first. Just get it in motion, get it started, and then fix it and tweak it and adjust it and revise it and evolve it as it goes on. I think this would have a lot of benefits to a lot of people in terms of their ability to gain more out of practice more quickly. And I see we have a viewer question about the current theory of warming up before exercise and stretching afterwards. Well, it used to be taught that stretching before, but they were what are known as static stretches. And a static stretch is where you reach and you stretch and you push a little bit and you hold that for, and most people don't hold it long enough anyway, but doing that before practice, before your muscles are warmed up, actually limits the performance of the muscle and can actually cause injury. So what you want to do beforehand as part of your warm up is what's known as dynamic stretching, which is stretching in motion. So you don't just reach your arm out and stretch, you do like arm circles and elbow circles and hand circles. And most people don't do them for long enough. They do them for 10 seconds. We should do those for long enough. You should devote, and I'd say at least 10 minutes of time to warm-ups, including dynamic stretches. And then afterwards, at least 10 minutes, 20 minutes is better. That's the time to do static stretching because your muscles are warmed up and looser, and then you can increase your range of motion by stretching. So that's the idea. That's a great question from a viewer. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm very much a dynamic stretcher. I put my kit on, I grab my sword and my shield, and I go through sword mechanics. I go through footwork and big rotations, 5-10 minutes before I even start training. And then training is always not as abrupt as sparring, but then you still get a chance to warm up some more and feel how things are moving, feel how your armor's feeling in the evening, if something's pinching or binding before it becomes a catastrophic failure or a bite or something. Tristan, did you looked like you had something?
Well, to sum up is you never want to stretch cold. Cold stretching leads to tearing. So warm up the muscles, and you don't have to go crazy, but get things moving and warmed up, and then do your stretches. It does pay to stretch after your activity, but I wanted to add in one thing, and this is something that is as much of an instruction as you can get, but it also builds the social bond, and that is, as you're taking off your armor, have like a debriefing. Talk with the people that you sparred with and say, here's what I was trying to do. Here's what I noticed. Here's what I think worked. Here's what didn't. Here's what I was doing to you that was working. Here's what I was doing to you that you successfully foiled. Get into a dialogue with people. And I know some practices are probably pretty good about this, but I've found that many times people, like, they go out, they fight, they take their armor off, they pack it up and they leave. It's almost like they're missing the best part of learning from one another. And that's not just the in-helm time, but it's helping each other once you've taken your helmet off. And you can do that with a sparring partner at the end of each little sparring session. You can do it intermittently throughout your practice, but you can also do it at the end. And when you do it at the end, I found that there's a certain amount of social, kind of like a magic that happens there, where you both are enjoying what you just did. You're helping each other out. You're kind of leaving it on a note of, it's kind of like making notes in your notebook about what you just did. And it's good if you do have a notebook, you can write them down so you can remind yourself during the week for when you go next week, okay, well, here's what I did well, or here's what maybe I need to work on, to allow yourself into more of a habit than just being there one night a week or however many nights you go, but to internalize what you've been doing, things, deficiencies that your opponents have found. And maybe that allows you a time to think of a plan for how you're going to deal with it from here on out. How do you stop them from taking your leg each time, or how do you stop from getting wrapped in the butt, or whatever you tend to be having an issue with, as well as things you're working on, that you want to develop a great leg shot, or you want to work on that offside body that you see other people do that you don't do very well. It allows you the process of making this a week-long habit, not just a once a week burst habit. When it comes to learning anything, you'll do better doing 10 minutes a day, 7 days a week, than 2 hours a day once a week. So make it that ongoing habit, not just the in-helm time.
And I like the idea of just keeping a notebook in your armor bag.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you a quick chance. You can write down things for yourself. I would tell everybody to participate in that structuring of a practice, whether you're a unbelt, a squire, knight. Don't rely on just all of the trainers to come up with training. Say, hey, you know what? I'm really having a hard time with this step. Is there a process that we can practice all together to come up with a way to train that? And somebody else might say, well, this is how I do it. And then all of a sudden you've got a nice dialogue, not just one person dictating what everybody's learning, or how you're learning it, which is even more important than sometimes than what you're learning.
Yeah, that actually brings up a really great topic, and that is how people tend to interact at a practice. And I'm sure this runs a full spectrum all over the place. But when you go back to your practice, maybe you find where people aren't quite ready or comfortable with coaching you. So maybe you need to show up and go over to somebody and say, you know what, I see that you do this thing really well. I want you to teach me. I want you to help me out. Sort of get them out of their shell. One of the things that is also a perishable skill is social skills. And many of us have been isolated for a year. So, we've kind of been all sort of told to be afraid of one another's company. So that's something we need to brush up on as well. So when you go, and it's great if you have somebody or a group of people at your practice that are active about coaching and active about teaching, and you can make yourself available to them. But if that doesn't happen, take a bit of initiative, invite them to help you. And the same way may go through if you feel you have some ability and you see somebody that's struggling, stretch your hand out and say, here, may I help you? Or would you like some help? I'd like to assist you in getting better, and let me see if I can help. And I think we need to kind of brush up on re-socializing and getting in connection with one another again. And this could actually help with structuring practices a little bit more from a coaching standpoint than from a just sparring standpoint too. So when everybody wants that same thing, whether they're the coach or the student, the more each side expresses an interest, the more they come together and get to what we're looking for, which is a more effective way of spending our time at a practice, and therefore more productive, and people get better faster. They love that part.
That's a huge point, especially if you're the unbelted or the squire and you're looking for help and you're like, oh, that Octamasades, he's just kind of being quiet and standing over there by himself. He doesn't want to work with me or anything. No, it's probably just thinking about how my day went earlier that day, and maybe I haven't talked to a certain person enough, and I'm kind of hesitant on kind of going over and immersing them in my passion for what we do. So sometimes having that dialogue lets us know, okay, it's okay that we can get involved. I'm not worried about screwing up something you're working on. So that's absolutely a valid point.
Yeah, we're going to be crossing a threshold here where positive energy is going to be even more meaningful than it usually is. And so I'd say, like with everything, what you do physically is less important than the what's in your heart and how you approach it in terms of your attitude. If you've got a great positive attitude and you're like, I want to learn, help me out, or I want to help you out, I think all those things are going to be make a profound difference in the tone of what the whole group is. Because when the whole group gets on a frequency like that, it really is amazing, and it's something that everybody wants to be a part of.
Yeah, it feeds. We have another good question in Facebook. Is there a particular set of recommended warm-up stretches that we should do, or a standard sport stretch is best? I know for me, so I've had a shoulder injury, I've torn a calf muscle, I've had various different injuries. So I'm always looking at the big dynamic circles. I get my wrists and my elbows and my shoulders warmed up with a little weight. That's why I like to have my kit on. So I have some bit of resistance. Neck is an everyday thing that I stretch to keep it limber. So the spine, my hips, always big rotations with hips, knees, safe knees. Make sure you're supporting those while you're rotating. Ankles, and then just using the weight of my equipment to just dynamically stretch out all of the muscles in between. That's kind of my pre-game.
If I had to do over again, I would take on Indian clubs as a way to condition the shoulders. Our shoulders really do take a pounding with SCA fighting, and I had a shoulder injury too. So add that bit of, when you said a bit of weight, and in most Indian clubs you started at 1 pound, and moving up, it's not like, don't think of it like an Olympic weightlifter or something like that, where heavier means more power. The muscles that we use to control the path of the sword are the very small controller muscles. When you start adding big weight, even two pounds on an Indian club is enough to take you beyond those small muscle development that you need for the controllers. So I would look at getting some Indian clubs. There's some great YouTube resources out there for how to use them and how to build the movement patterns, but getting those shoulders loosened up is really important. I think you hit on the really good ones, the legs and the knees, and calves and hips. There's a lot of good motion drills. I don't think there's really any particular set that are better than most. but to warm them up. And the one thing I would warn people of, and Octa, it sounds like from what you have a flexible enough armor setup that you can go through stretches. I've seen people put on pretty heavy restrictive armor and then try to stretch in them, and really all they're doing is stretching their armor. Like they go to the limit of what their armor will allow, which is less than the limits of their own body for stretching, and they get nothing out of it. So for the most part, unless you've got a well constructed kit that fits you and is more flexible than your own body, my recommendation would be stretch out of armor, go to the maximum of your body's range of motion. Don't do it right away. Do small circles and then bigger and bigger and bigger. Kind of relax, get the muscles moving, and get to know where the limits of your range of motion are as you do it. Get a feel for when your muscles are tight, when their muscles are relaxed, and those warm-ups will help you out a great deal.
This can also reveal, doing it in that way can also reveal limitations in your armor.
Yes.
And I know I've said to squires and students before that who were upset that we discovered their armor was limiting what they could do. I said, that's great. That means your ability has now surpassed the quality of your armor. And yeah, it's a drag to have to upgrade your armor, but it means you're improving. So that's actually a good thing. So, but it can, that's why I do a warm up before armor. I mean, dynamic stretching motion before armor, and then put armor on and then warm up. So, the dynamic stretching includes some warm up, but then I continue the warm up in armor as well. So
yeah, that's a good idea. We did have a viewer question. What are the best elbow warm-ups? And this is from somebody with tennis elbow. I can't stress strongly enough that you should look into finding somebody who's got experience with athletic injuries. We really don't want to give any medical advice or anything like that. There are some very good elbow stretches and warm-ups for people with tennis elbow. And I know that Brannis, about, 15 years ago, almost had to stop fighting because his tennis elbow was so painful. And he found a good body worker that gave him some good stretches that allowed him to solve that problem. And so I think, the one thing about the SCA fighting is basically you're treating your body like a race car that a race driver is using. You need a mechanic. And I'm not talking about having one permanently full time, but you should know somebody that can help you fix your body, because you're going to be pushing it beyond a limit of somebody just driving their car to the grocery store twice a week. This sport is kind of hard on the body. It just is what it is.
And it's not just your usage, right? It's people hitting you with a stick and slamming that fascia into the muscle over and over again.
Yep. And I would even say the impact is probably the more minor of the two, whereas you're throwing your arm in big arcs and you're doing things to it that are, any athlete, even runners, and comparatively SCA fighting to things like running is, I think running is less harmful to the body, but even runners have trainers and they have people that can work on the body. They if there's something wrong with it, they have people that they send them to that are specialists in making sure that those runners are functioning correctly. Their legs and their knees and their hips are all aligned the way that they should be, and that they develop muscles to do the running without causing harm to their body. So it's easy to think that the SCA is like a hobby and you don't need somebody like that, a body worker that can help you. But I assure you, it's going to be time well spent to find somebody that understands athletics and athletic injuries and can get you going again. And tennis elbow is a easily curable problem. It's not something that's going to stop you from doing what you do. If you were local to me, I'd point you right at my wife, because that's exactly what she does. She's an amazing body worker, but she's worked a lot of athletes back and martial artists back into their activity. There are those people out there. They can be hard to find. So be patient, but be diligent and relentless. Find one, and you'll be happy that you did.
And I would add to that if your dynamic motion and static stretching after is only limited to your practices, you're not doing enough of it, because a lot of people suffer from elbow problems because they sit at a computer with their arms bent like this, and everything shortens up, and then you're trying to do stuff where you're extending it, and so it's tight. And so yeah, do some of that every day. I advise I've always for a long time advised my students, classroom students, to stand up once an hour and look out a window to refresh their eyes, and make sure they're standing with their ears aligned with their shoulders, and make sure they stretch, and do that once an hour, because we're sitting at a desk for hours and hours at a time. That's going to make fighting more difficult, because you're moving in ways that you're sitting in ways that are opposed to you're moving, and are going to make it harder to do that. So I'd say do some of this every day.
I would say that is a perfect everyday practice. So that's really important in what we do, instead of just going from couch to tournament, from one practice a week and then go fight super hard on the weekends and then back to sitting on the couch. To Tristan's point earlier, I have a kettle mace, 10-pound kettle mace that sits behind my workstation at home. And every time I get up to go do something, a couple times a day, I'm swinging that mace, because it feels so good to stretch out the shoulders and everything else. There you go.
It's sitting right under my desk. So yeah.
Well, I have a hand squeezer that lives in my car. I have bands that sit next to my desk in my office at work. Wherever I go, I've got some sort of resistance that I can just get 5-10 minutes every so often. It really makes a difference.
Yep. And motion is medicine, and movement is medicine. So think about, even if you're doing body weight things, whether it's, just some active moving around like calisthenic type things with some stretching, or if you want to add some weights or body weight exercises to add intensity, a lot of these things. And I loved how you mentioned this point of, if you need to get the time in, take a minute or two here and there several times throughout the day, rather than try to carve out a solid hour in order to do your workout. Because I think we talked about this in one of our early episodes about how do you prioritize your time, because we only have a finite amount of time. If you make time for one thing you want to do, you got to cut out something else. And it was funny as people kind of went into the lockdown thing, and even throughout the year, almost everybody I've talked to, none of them are bored. Everyone's like, I'm busier now than I was before this whole thing. So when you're that busy, what are you going to carve out now in order to make time for practice, to make time for your training? So if you can do the conditioning in 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, there are ways to work these things in. Of course, you can't do fighter practice that way. You have to actually go and show up and be there. But to make this a habit during the week will help you when it comes to that time where you do put your armor on and you want to go perform. You're not just going to go from, sitting on the couch eating bonbons to being in your armor and fighting it at high intensity level. Body doesn't like that up and down. It likes more of a constant inertia.
Yeah. Now I'm craving bonbons.
I said the B word.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking about all of this preparedness, right? So right now, before everything starts up, you have time to get your kit, maybe make it a little more flexible, adjust it out or in, depending on how your COVID habits have been going. And again, no guilt, no emotion tied to that. Just make sure that when you can go do it, you're ready to go do it. No excuses that you could have prevented are going to hold you back.
One big thing that I would definitely recommend is check the padding on your helmet. One thing I found is that, and this is just commonplace. I used to be Earl Marshal, and we had instances where people had gone for years without repadding their helmet, and the padding will either harden up or it will soften up and start to disintegrate, especially without being used. If it just sits there, it will degrade. So maybe look at repadding your helmet and getting it set up for, protecting your skull, protecting your brain. These are things that, and getting your armor together. If you really are ambitious, maybe now is the time to change the look of your outfit, dress it up better. How many people have we heard procrastinate? Well, I know my armor looks like crap and I really want to have it look nice, but well, why not? Now's a good time to do it. Kind of reinvent yourself, reinvent how you train, reinvent how you look. These are good times to make the most of this break.
And it doesn't have to be
go time is coming. It's coming quick.
And you don't have to schedule hours, just like practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can sit while you're watching TV and retape new foam in your helmet. You can cut new straps, poke new holes while you're doing something else or playing a game with the kids or whatever. So there's ways to put a little bit of that creativity in. When we're talking about stretching and physically exercising, but don't forget the mental aspect too. Take some quiet time, read a book about fighting, even better. We have quite the list. Watch some cool videos. Obviously you're all here watching this show, so you are already investing an hour or two, depending on how long we talk, and some mental acuity to this. So do yourself a favor and find that quiet that's just you and some mental time. Take notes while you're doing Pell work, so you get in the habit of taking notes.
Yeah, I see that we have another question from online. It said, I assume most kingdoms put a hold on inactivity and expiration for unauthorizations. Do you think it may be a good idea to reauthorize? May give us sort of a starting point for those who aren't knights yet. Yeah, I think this is who knows exactly what the policy is going to be. I know prior to the lockdown thing, if somebody was not an active fighter for a year, they would be required to do a reauthorization bout, which is not a full authorization, like a new authorization bout, but just to show that they've kind of been in training. Usually they would have to go to a few practices before they do that to kind of knock the rust off, and so to speak, and to, kind of brush up on those perishable skills. So I think as we get back, practices will open up first. I don't know if you would need to do a reauthorization because, having administered some reauthorization bouts, really it's just kind of watching somebody spar and to see that they still have control. They still have, enough accuracy. They're not hitting below the knee or being dangerous. Their calibration is still, within reasonable terms. So I don't think it would be necessary to reauthorize, but certainly if you feel that it would do you well, have somebody go through an authorization round with you. If you want to do that, that would be up to you. I would doubt that they are going to require it, that kingdoms are going to urge people to do that. But like I said, it's more about our own personal responsibility and making sure that we are safe. And it's good that everybody has that in mind themselves, rather than having a kingdom or a earl marshal force everybody to go through a reauthorization round to go do that.
I think it's a good idea if people watch each other, mm-hmm. and help each other, not with an idea towards criticism, but towards the idea of, hey, we're all in this together. We've all been in the same circumstance. Let's help each other and point out things, hey, you may have forgotten, or, hey, you're trying to do something that's not really working, or let's start with something else, or just be excellent to each other and party on, dude.
Party on. Yep.
Make sure you haven't forgotten your gorget or your
right
sword gauntlet or something. Right. You're not used to it.
It's easy to forget when you're out of the habit of getting your armor on and getting your gear together. It definitely is kind of its own ritual, and once you break that habit for a year, it can be rough getting back into it.
I know for me, putting my armor on, I always do it the same way every time, in the same order, because that physical ritual associates with a certain state of mind. And so it helps me get into the state of mind for practice or for tournament, and I do it the same way. But if I haven't done it in quite a while, it won't be there. I have to reestablish that sequence. I have to reestablish that physical ritual, and I have to find that state of mind again and reassociate those actions, the physical action with the mental state.
No, that's very true. We have another viewer question. So what types of cardio or strength training do you find helps your fighting? And let's split these into two. I found for cardio myself, there's nothing better than interval training. This builds your cardio much better than anything else. And by interval training, what I'm talking about is, for example, let's say you go out for a run. You're going to do sort of a trot or a slow jog or something like that for about 30 seconds to a minute. And then you sprint for 30 seconds or a minute. You can kind of judge the interval. And then you go back to jogging. Running teams, like cross-country running teams, will build their cardio. They'll put 8 or 9 or 10 people, however many people are on their team, and they'll go out for kind of a loping sort of a run. And they'll have the person at the back of the line sprint to the front of the line. And when they get there, they slow down to the pace. And then the new back person sprints to the front. So you're doing that fast, slow, fast, slow. That builds cardio faster than anything that I've experienced. And I remember doing this before Gulf Wars. I had a stationary bike in my basement, and it was programmable for the resistance. So I would go, at a pace I could go, get the heart start beating. And I didn't have a heartbeat monitor or anything. You don't need to get that scientific about it. Just do a pace that gets your heart going, and then just crank up the resistance and pump as hard as you can for about 30 seconds or a minute, 45 seconds. Don't go crazy at the beginning, but try to do that for about low end, about 20, 25 minutes. But high end, really, you only need about 35 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes. You don't need to do it for an hour, but what I noticed is it has an amazing effect on building your cardio. And the only other thing that I'll add in there, and I got this from one of my housemates that was a former runner in college, and he said that one of the best things you can do that will help your cardio and your performance on performance day is about 30 minutes or so, 20 to 30 minutes before you go to perform, drink a liter of water. That water will help thin the blood and make it easier for your heart to pump. I found that alone had a profound effect on how much my heart was working to pump the blood. Like I could tell when I didn't drink that water and when I did. I mean, it was like a night and day difference. So granted, that doesn't mean you have license to sit on the couch and eat bonbons instead of doing training during the week. Definitely do that. But if you do cardio training and you don't thin your blood before you go to compete or before you go to perform, your heart's going to be pumping like crazy. And so there's different things you can do to help that. And those are the two that stood head and shoulders above everything else that I'd come across or tried.
Yeah, I would agree.
And somebody wrote about high intensity intervals training or Tabata. As I've heard it, Tabatas are pretty much interval training. Like it's a word that they use for the timing for them, as I understand it. But yeah, the high intensity intervals are pretty much the interval training that I'm referring to. Now for strength training, my advice is stay away from high weights. Think low weights, lot of repetitions rather than few repetitions and high weights. You're not looking to add bulk. You're not looking to increase the strength of the big muscles, because the big muscles aren't what SCA fighting uses. It uses mostly the small controller muscles. And I'm talking about both the chest, shoulders, and arms, as well as the legs and the knees and the hips. When you're talking about fine turning and shifting, like what Bronis was showing on his footwork stuff over the weekend, you're not talking about throwing 400 pounds on a leg sled to build up muscles. You're talking about all the stuff that controls your balance and how your body shifts. Just remember, those are all small, fine muscles. So adding weight, your body will shift away from using those and use the big muscles. So don't work on muscles you're not using for your activity. So that's why I like things like, kettlebells, smaller kettlebells, Indian clubs, body weight conditioning, things like that. It may not feel like you're pounding a lot of weight because you're not, but you're really building up what fighting uses for conditioning.
I like core, a lot of core strength, abdominal
Core,
strength.
core is huge. Yeah.
I like to, I'll turn the mace upside down so the ball end is close to my hand, so I just have the weight of the rod, and I'll go through my sword mechanics with that, even on the pellet, just slow, just building up all those soft tissues and strengthening them and stretching at the same time. And then balance.
Yep.
Balance.
Yeah, you don't need to go crazy. Don't think Arnold Schwarzenegger here.
No.
You know, that'd be the wrong direction.
I'd say reps and consistency are more important than weight and maxing out.
Right. Yep. Smooth over power.
So you have an acceleration. And worst thing you can do is have something too bulky and tight and then tear it, because that's the other alternative.
You know, and as you look at taking that to the PAL and your sword form, and you know, as Sean would say, your stick mechanics, don't feel like you're pushing the stick. And that's, I guess, that's the equation that I would make to feeling like you want to get under a bench press and, you know, press 250, 300 pounds. There you're pushing the weight. Instead, you want to feel like your sword is flying towards its target, like it's being drawn or it's being pulled. I remember talking about this in one of our earlier episodes, the magnet theory. Feel like your sword is a magnet and it's being drawn to the target. And that's that smooth, fluid power that comes from good mechanics. When you have that down, you'll hit with a lot of power, but it won't feel like you're exerting effort. Like that's what you're looking for, not just to use a large amount of muscle to be pushing your sword around or pushing the weapon around, or your body for that matter.
And it's that anchor, that sudden stop that creates that pop.
Right. Power. Exactly. Yep. So
we covered practice. And again, when getting back to kind of dovetailing back into practice, it's go with a plan. If you're taking our advice and you're creating a working training environment, when you do the sparring and you're sparring with what you've trained, then that last part is that important evaluation. Being able to, like Tristan was talking about, sit down with the folks you're working with, even a third-party observer that is going to have a totally different perception than the two combatants, the two people, the two trainees, and get that important feedback. That is gold. That means you can actually improve by maybe next week or next couple of weeks, as opposed to struggling for 2 or 3 months trying to figure out just why that step's not working or that technique's not working, especially after, you know, our onboard computers, our lizard brains, we haven't been training them. Unless you've been really diligent, you haven't been training that muscle. And so being able to self-evaluate can be a lot more difficult than it usually is.
Mm-hmm. It definitely can. Another idea that I would suggest also is use this time for those people who, for example, are watching this show. You've probably been absorbing content. Maybe you've been watching some of the fight analysis videos that Sean and Helga have been doing, or any of the other numerous amounts of content that you can have watch fights or watch people teach fighting. Take your notepad down and write down a wish list of the stuff that you wish you could do. Like make a tangible checklist, and when you get back to practice, this will give you a start for, hey, I want to work on this particular thing. I saw, you know, this knight or this duke be able to do this particular shot, or I want to be able to do that. I want that kind of footwork. And that allows you to work up a plan for how to get it. But make it like kind of your letter to Santa Claus. Like, what would you like in your stocking? I find that those things, I never kept a journal when I was fighting, but I had all these things in my mind, and I turned this into a weekly cycle. And that was, I'd get done with the practice and I would say, okay, either I would, maybe during the weekend I went to a tournament, or I went to, you know, I saw something that I wanted to pick up. And this was before the whole YouTube thing. And, you know, when I would have to watch and study in person. And I would say, all right, I want to work on that. I like what this person's doing. That was really great. Either they did it to me or I watched them do it to somebody else. Like, you know, I want to pick this up. So I'd log it in my mind and be like, okay, I'd go to practice. Okay. And I'd think about, as practice time was coming up, like a couple of days in advance. And I'd think, all right, how am I gonna make that work? How did they do it? And I'd try to break it down in my head, and I would start getting a plan together for what happened when I got my armor on. And I would do this at work. I'd think about it on the way home or in the evening, just intermittently here and there, but I'd get more and more excited about getting to practice. Like, I can't wait to work on this. I really want to try it out, or I have an idea of what I want to do. So as I put my armor on, that ritual part, I'd start thinking, and I'd probably have maybe 2 or 3 things. That's about all, but that's what I want to work on. I really want to get these things down, and I would devote myself within the sparring or within the practice. Maybe I'd come up with a drill, or maybe I'd just go to try to do it. And then at the end, I'd say, oh, how did it go? How did I do? Was I able to do it? Well, no, I got to work on it more next week. I got to keep going. Or, yeah, all right, I started making this work. How can I improve it? And I'd make that as my list, my debriefing list. Okay, what am I going to do for next week? And then I would turn that into, I'd use visualization, and I would start figuring out, all right, how do I tune it? What can I do? And then the few days before practice, I'd start getting excited again. Like, I can't wait to get there. Here's what I want. I've got my plan. I'm trying to make the most of my time. And within there, of course, when I would face other people and they'd be working on whatever they did, and they'd have something that would work, I'd say, okay, well, I need to work on defending against this. Like, how am I going to do it? So it was an ongoing process throughout the week, not just on practice nights, but it helped me get excited and get eager to get to practice. And there were years that I never missed a practice. And, that's maybe just kind of the OCD person that I am. When I get into something, I love it, and I can't get enough. And I never had to fight myself to get to practice. It was always, something I was very passionate about. But I understand when people have those issues, and if you don't have something to look forward to, then you can easily lower the priority of getting to practice because you'd rather, sit home and watch a movie, or you'd rather relax on the couch with a beer or whatever it is that you want to do. But these things help build that anticipation and that excitement. I think once things get going again, there's going to be an initial wave of a lot of people going to practice and to meetings and to SCA stuff just because they can again. But be careful of having that be just suddenly a fad wave that dies out because you aren't getting what you want out of that practice. So this is going to be a really great time and a good combination of forces coming together that can make a really good, exciting, and productive new habit building. So I would say use that, if that makes sense.
There are a couple things I'd like to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I thought didn't think you were going to say sitting having a beer. I thought for sure you were going to say bonbons.
Bonbons. Still on the bonbons.
And you say it 3 times and then they appear, right?
All right. Okay.
But what you were describing, Tristan, were small goals. Mm-hmm. It's not a big goal. The big goal is achieved through small goals, through mm-hmm. small steps. So this technique, this one thing, this one defense, this one thing, work on that specific thing, and then improve that, and then add another thing, and then add another thing, and then go back, make sure you still got the first thing, and add it to it that way. Sometimes I think the first goal is, and this it's certainly true now, is showing up. Just show up. You can't do any of the rest of this unless you show up. And sometimes the first several times back, you've shown up, you warmed up, you did some movement beforehand, you got your gear on, you went through some movement, you did some to establish that new process when you're there, but show up to do it. And then start setting your small goals. Do that reevaluation that Octa talked about. Where are you? What do you need to work on? Develop a plan in small steps, not in big leaps, but in small steps, and then show up again and do it. And I think that's really that's really helpful to think about it that way.
Absolutely. I mean, setting those little victory conditions, I mean, showing up is a great one because all that requires is you just go into practice. Now, if you manage to throw your armor bag in the car at the same time, sweet. Now you're set up for your next victory condition. And, I'm all about instant gratification. So if I get a cookie just for showing up, woo, I hit my first goal. Now I put my armor on. Okay, I can remember how to do that. Sweet, 2 goals done. It's not even 10 minutes into practice, and I got 2 goals accomplished. Boom. And then you see everybody else kibitzing and having a good time, and now you start to feed off that community, and you get to contribute to that community, and it just grows from there.
And that can be even a motivator for getting your armor together. Imagine you kind of in your depression or whatever it is that I don't feel like getting my armor together, but you're still looking forward to that first practice, and you show up and your armor is not in repair, so you show up without it, and you see everybody else get armored up and fight, and you're like, God, I wish I was out there. Well, back that up and prepare yourself for what you're anticipating. Be ready to have your armor, and if everybody else is having a good time, you're in there having a good time with them. And to me, that's the magic of the SCA, is to be there, be in the moment, be participating with other people. Like that's the magic part. Sitting on the sidelines because you didn't prepare or you're not ready or that's almost more depressing than sitting at home. I mean, because you're so close, you've got it in your fingertips, you're right there, and you can't do it. So I think we're already kind of like horses at the starting gate, ready for those doors to burst open and get back to it. And the SCA still has a magic that we can get back to. So it's exciting to look at it that way.
Yeah, and if you need help, if your kit's not up to snuff, but maybe you don't have the skills or the facilities to get it back in repair, put those feelers out now. Again, we have a huge community. Somebody will help you. I've had through this whole COVID, people show up and drop shit off at my house. Just, hey, I thought you might need this. I'm like, wow, that's really amazing. Or, hey, that person's in need of something. Let's get something sent to them. Or, so if you need some straps cut or rivets or kind of stuff, somebody out there will be able to help.
Absolutely. And the SCA has always been great about that. I think too that we're going to see a whole new level of appreciation for what the SCA offers. And when people come back, I think the feel is going to be different and even better than it was, because they're going to be so happy to have the support they had from one another, the ability to go and actually be live with people and enjoy what we've always enjoyed. Hopefully we will have that. And I do think, I think every activity is going to have the same thing, because, nobody likes being a prisoner, even though it might be your own home. Human beings are social creatures, and the society is exactly that social aspect is its most important part. And the camaraderie around fighting is the social bonds, in my opinion, the strongest level. There's something so personal that happens between people when they get in their armor and they go fight. It's not just two people trying to hit one another. It very much is a personal engagement and interaction.
Well, you're giving your trust to another person.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, straight up, you're trusting somebody enough and giving them enough love that you're opening up your 5 seconds of art in a tournament, right? So
right, exactly. And you're also going through a tribulation together. You're finding the truth of yourself. They're helping you develop, even if they don't offer you any advice or actively, just by fighting you, they are helping you improve, and vice versa. So there is a very strong bond there. And most martial artists have that very same experience when they train with their fellow students and whatnot. So there's a lot to that. And one thing I do want to mention too is that oftentimes when we look at treating the SCA combat like a martial art, we talk about coaching. It seems very mechanical, but I assure you it's far more emotional and mental and spiritual than it is mechanical. It sounds like it because we're talking about footwork and body mechanics and things like that, but there's a special relationship between an athlete and their coach. It's very personal. that the support that that athlete is given by their coach is nourishing it, on the same level of a parent and a child. The love that is between a parent and child is similar to that of a coach and an athlete a lot of times, because there's so much emotional investment in the advancement and the growth of the athlete. So don't think of it as merely being mechanical or somehow, just, well, we want to be better and that's what our focus is on being a better fighter, being a better, athlete or things like that. It goes far beyond that. And when you have somebody that you've found that's willing to invest their time in you, that is special. Yep. When you find somebody that wants your advice on how to improve, that's very special. It's special for both parties. So to me, that's the part about being a coach and helping people, and even finding mentors that can help me, that means the world to me. So keep that in mind as we go along with this journey of how to help others. That's true humanity, is helping other people and accepting help from others.
Eliahu, did you have a comment?
Yeah, we haven't talked too much about about what Tristan was just talking about. We did in one episode last year, I think, talk about Mushin, the mind of the fighter's mind, no mind. And we talked about that, and certainly a lot of martial arts have that component of personal growth and spiritual growth. And I think that's something that as fighters, as practitioners of this martial sport that we do, we don't talk about a lot, but it's certainly there. Having moments when there's that flow of energy between you and your partner in the dojo I go to. It's not your opponent, it's your partner, and you feel that connection. And having those moments where time slows and you know what's going to happen, you have all the time in the world, and you're relaxed, and you're not hurrying, but you're moving quickly and just easily, and everything flows. Those I wish I could do that all the time. We all do. Yeah,
that's attorney magic right there.
Yeah. But having experienced that, you want to get that again, and we don't talk about that a lot. I think mostly because that's the result of all these little steps. That's the result of all these things. You practice your stance and your footwork until it's not something you consciously think about. You practice the techniques of throwing a blow properly oriented with sufficient force. So you don't think about that. So your mind is free to think strategically, and eventually your mind is free. And we don't talk about that a lot, but I think it's good to touch on every once in a while to remind people that it's actually there and that it's actually possible. And that's I think the stories that some of us tell, some of us tell stories, I think are often centered around those moments when we've had those experiences, those fighting stories, when we've had those experiences, because those are the ones that are one of the terms is transcendental. You're transcending simply the physical skills and doing something more. And so, yeah, it's good to think about that every once in a while, but getting there, you don't jump to that. It's all the steps and all the skills and learning all of those things and practicing all those things that eventually that becomes possible.
That's the real reward in these kind of art forms, is you do all that work to build the pyramid, all those foundations, so that they're deliberate, but they're second nature. big mind, no mind things, so that your brain's not cluttered or slowed down by all of these things that it takes to throw a perfect snap, all the footwork, all the hours of sweat. And it's not the victory is not always defeating your opponent. It's that ultimate control that you exhibit over yourself. And you're able to get there because of all of these foundational things that we work so hard to build. It's definitely, that's my hope for any of my students, is that they get to feel that fight, win or lose. They get to find that space with another human being. It's,
And I think that's the exciting part about restarting the activities that we have, is you can create a new relationship, maybe with somebody you've known for years, but to bridge the gap and say, either I want to help you or I would like your help. And that's going to be a strong social bond. It's also going to provide nourishment for, both of you, regardless of who the mentor and who the student is. And if you don't have, somebody with a lot of experience in your group, two people can get together and learn from one another and do great things. I know that I've heard many people say, well, we don't have any knights in our group, or we don't have anybody that's experienced. How on earth can we ever get better? I've seen people that have had that are pretty green, and they start with maybe a roommate or somebody who's very close to them and says, we're both serious, let's learn to do this. Nobody started SCA fighting who was awesome when they first started. I mean, especially as you go back to, what is it, 1969 or 67 or whenever this whole thing started, when they were using tent poles and motorcycle helmets. Like, nobody was good at this. The people that got good did it because their heart was in it and they wanted to learn. And you can learn by doing it. It's not necessarily the quickest way, but if you don't have any other choice, find a couple of workout partners, or even just one workout partner that say, let's work on this, and connect up with, now you have a resource that, they didn't have back in the day, which is, the videos that we're making, the training structure drills and things that we have that you can watch videos of and follow along. You can contact us for advice or to work with you. There are ways to reach out and get that help. And we're ready to do that. And I love the internet for providing so many new avenues for people that never existed, but even without it, they were able to do some great things. So now there's really no excuse. It all comes down to you engaging and getting what it is you'd like out of this society and out of the art.
and to speak to that, Branos, even though he's not here, has got some great comments. I like his comment that even if you don't fight, if your gig is to not put on armor, come out to practice if you have the time.
Yeah.
Come out, part of the community. Kibitz, watch, enjoy it. I mean, if that's something that brings you joy, please come out. It's not like we're going to shut the doors and have a secret dojo meeting.
That's right.
I love the practices when you've got rapier fighters in one corner, the heavy fighters in another corner. You got archery going on. You got some arts and sciences happening. Those are great. If you have the ability to have a practice with more of your SCA community,
Yeah.
it makes it better.
I remember in our barony, we'd have a practice every weeknight, or not every weeknight, but once a week during the weeknights. And then our barony meeting was on Sundays. And we got to the point where we had so many people showing up at practice, like 80% of them were just to kibitz. They weren't fighters, but they had such a great time hanging around the fighters and what was going on, that our fighter practice was much bigger than our meetings. And, you'd go to a Sunday meeting and there was maybe, 15, 20 people there. You go to a fighting practice, there's 50, because it's just a fun place to hang around. And it's where, I mean, even watching people practice is fun and amusing, and there's things to get out. There's an energy there. So yeah, it's a good thing.
Right on. Any more things to cover? Any more questions coming in?
Yeah. How are we doing on our list of your topics that you put together?
I think we just about hit it. I mean, really, it's right now is using the time you have now to start to prepare.
Sure.
Start collecting those things that you want to practice and work on. Start your everyday practice. your self-awareness, your introspection. We've talked about stretching and exercise and planning your practice. We've talked about, and most importantly, I think you guys hit it early on, was don't be hard on yourself. Give yourself a break. You know, go about half as hard as you think you should and work your way up. Start now, give you time to ramp up, get back into the swing of things if you're not ready. I know I went to a workout last Sunday, and 2 days after that, I couldn't walk down my stairs. My legs were so sore. Thanks, Bronos, for that one.
He does that even remotely.
But that forced me to do some reevaluation because I thought my cardio and my core strength was still pretty okay, and nope, it's not. So I need to reevaluate and start pushing that a little bit. So,
in fact, that's a good point of the I guess the danger of a mistaken self-evaluation. It's one thing to think you are something; it's another to test it and find out really where you are.
exactly.
So that's a good learning lesson to approach that way. I guess one thing I could think of to add on to this, and I know we're getting down to our last 10 minutes or so, and that is, as we start getting back into it, also realize that your local group may have some difficulties getting practices going for any number of reasons. Don't be afraid to take the initiative and perhaps organize a practice at your own house or in a park. Find the people that are interested in getting going and get going. Don't let somebody else's inactivity keep you on your own couch eating those bonbons.
I know a lot of people can stand in one place with their hand in their pockets waiting for somebody
Right.
to act.
You know, and I tell you, it's the easiest thing in the world to say, well, you know, I'm only available on Wednesdays and the practice is normally on Thursdays, so I'll never be able to make it. If you want something, make it happen. Find somebody else that also has Wednesdays free. You know, you may have to do a little bit of legwork, a little bit of calling or emailing, but express your interest and make what you want to have happen. And this is an old school SCA value. If you want to see something go on, be ready to roll up your sleeves, make some phone calls, and get people into doing it and make it work. Figure something out. And I think waiting for somebody else to organize what you want to do is going to be, might never happen, or it might never happen in a way that you can participate. So take an active role, be part of the organizer side rather than just waiting for things to get rolling. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and if you're unsure about what to do at a practice, or maybe you haven't had a chance to communicate, somebody just posted a great thing in the chat. Ask your opponent what they're working on. That's my standard go-to line when somebody comes up and asks me to fight at a practice. If I know who they're normally working with, I've got that. If not, I'll say, hey, who do you normally work with? Who's your knight? If what are you working on tonight? What are your victory conditions? Those are my three go-tos. Oh, you
Sure.
don't have a victory condition? Let's come up with one. Let's spar a little, and then let's come up with some things to work on, you know, and have a purpose. Got it. Something with a purpose.
Yeah, being able to convey to even newer fighters, maybe that aren't thinking on that level of what is your what are you working on tonight? Just the idea of being asked that question would be, oh, should I have something to work on? Even asking themselves that is a step across a threshold into a newer level of learning and study, and being able to guide them there and say, you know, yeah, how about we work on making it so that you aren't just going to get flat snapped in the head every time. Let's work on that. You know, they may not be thinking on that level, but if you have a bit more of experience, guide them there. They will appreciate it. They will benefit from it. They will grow from that. And in the same way, if you have something like, I get flat snapped all the time, how do I stop that? Make that clear to your opponent and get them to help you. And that'll be beneficial.
Yeah. If it's not fun, if you're not having a good time, then you're doing something wrong. So let's figure out how we can make it better. It can be frustrating. Frustration's okay, failure's okay, but nobody should be driving the struggle bus all the time.
Exactly. And I guess to come around full circle to the title of this show is, how do we reconnect with the fun part? And that is really the key. And if you spend a little time doing a little self-analysis and realizing, well, what is it about the SCA that's fun for me? What do I really enjoy? What aspect of learning to fight or fighting do I enjoy? Make your plan to reconnect with that part. If it takes identifying what it is, definitely do that. Because if you don't know, it's gonna be a crapshoot whether or not you connect with it. So if you can identify that, it will help you make sure that you're enjoying yourself. And I say this of even my Aikido students, like, we are here to enjoy learning and nourishing your growth. And if we're not doing that, I'm failing as an instructor and you're failing as a student. And I don't want to have either one of us fail at that endeavor. And the SCA is exactly the same way.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to that self-awareness and communication. If you can, you can tap into those things, then you're on the road to success.
Yep.
I think one of the useful questions for people to ask when trying to find the fun is, when are they not having fun and why? And understanding that can help people say, well, what is this? What is it about this that is making it not fun? Is it my expectations of myself? Is it somebody else's expectations of me? I know there have been times when going to an event felt like an obligation. It wasn't something I was looking forward to. Well, why is that? Why am I feeling that way? Why am I not looking forward to it? Why is it not fun? And thinking about that. And so trying to make sure that you're not expecting too much of yourself, or you're doing what you want to do, even if it's difficult. It's what you want to do. It's not somebody else's expectations of what you want to do, because that can be difficult too. So you have control in the SCA certainly of what it is that you want to do. So do what you want to do, but figuring that out, that's challenging. So have fun. Yeah. People learn better when they're having fun anyway.
Absolutely. 100%. And as a coach, because that's our kind of focus as a coach, make sure that the people that are learning from you are enjoying the process. Like, if they're miserable, if you can see that they're bored, disengaged, frustrated, that's on you, the coach. You are the guide, you're the mentor. You can guide somebody through learning without making them miserable. They should be enjoying it, and they should be seeing results. Maybe not huge results, but they should feel a tangible advancement when you've worked with them. And so, I guess that would be maybe a good ending point, is as you go into a practice again, as you start getting brushed up, and with this effort that we have on this channel of trying to help people learn to coach, I'm sure there's going to be people that are eager to try coaching. They want to get, and they should absolutely, definitely go try to do that. But also be kind to yourself. You're going to screw up. You're going to give people bad advice. You're going to do things that frustrate students. It happens to everybody, I assure you. Nobody is above it. But be kind to yourself. Even admit, like, hey, I want to coach, I want to help, but I might screw up. Be patient with me. I'm gonna improve. I'm gonna get better. Coaching is its own skill. Teaching is its own set of talents and skills and abilities. So be kind to yourself in that way. But you'll find that people appreciate the effort, because it says, I care about you. I want to help you. And that's going to be the glue of any practice group, of the society in general.
Yeah, and find balance.
What's that?
Balance, right? I know a lot of people get wholeheartedly headlong into a thing and push so hard, and at a certain point they feel like they can't get off. So just make sure you manage expectations and seek a balance.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up. We'll go through each person. If you have a few final thoughts, we can pop that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Do you want to go first? You want me to go first? I'll go first. So I'm all about the journey. So start now. If you haven't already started, nothing's wrong, but start now. Start building that foundation. Start by assessing, figure out where you need to begin, and then just begin. Set small, attainable goals, maybe have some longer term goals, find balance, start communicating with your community now. And I think that that's a great way to start for success.
Yeah, well said. Eliahu?
Yep. We've talked about a lot of this. I'd say the small steps, have fun, understand that you'll be frustrated. You don't master things right away. It takes people time. Do it, keep doing it. It'll feel like you won't get there. You'll hit plateaus. Fine, keep going, keep showing up. And it will happen. Trust other people to help you. Help other people when you can. Yeah, it'll be good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
The last thought I guess I'll leave you with is, with any training, whether you're the athlete or whether you're the coach, or whether you're training yourself to be a coach, you're learning the skills that go with teaching and mentoring others, is envision that it's investing in yourself, and you're investing in, if you're the mentor, you're investing in your student. Don't think of where can I get this person in 2 weeks. Think of where can I be myself in the next 2 weeks. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I liked the way that Octa put it, as it's the journey. There is no destination in this journey. You will never get to the point of saying, I'm the perfect fighter, I'm the perfect coach. You'll always say, no, I've got more to do. I could do this better. I could teach in a clearer way. I could help people advance along better, faster, help them understand easier. Same thing with fighting. It's all that same thing, but it's the journey that's enjoyable. So savor the journey. Don't beat yourself up that you're not farther along quicker, because that will be a sure recipe for disaster and for frustration. But enjoy it. Enjoy the time you spend with students. Enjoy the time you spend with a mentor that is there to invest in your learning. Savor those things. Maybe realize in the past that you've taken these things for granted. We all have, because we're all human. But now that we've been without all of those things for a year, I think we can fully appreciate them when we get the opportunity to come back to them. So I guess that's what I would leave you with. And I guess this is the point we thank Vesper once again for running the show. And yeah, thank you very much, Vesper. We appreciate it.
Aw,
Thanks
thank you
everybody
all.
for coming out. You guys are a great community, and we couldn't do this without all the awesome comments.
Yeah, thank you all for the questions and the comments. This has been great.
Yeah, and next week will be another great one as well, so be sure to come back for that. All right.
Absolutely.
I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Thank you guys for joining us, and I look forward to seeing everybody again next week.
Right on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
have a good night and a good weekend, everyone.
Good night.